Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our welcome back to our Fast Fact series. And for this Fast Fact, we are going to focus in on the career of the king of the Egyptian king known as Akhenaten. Now, his birth name was Amenhotep, and he originally began his reign using the name Amenhotep the Fourth. He was named after his father, and his birth name is also significant because it also means that Amun, the principal deity of Egypt, was pleased. Um, he was a member of perhaps the greatest dynasty of antiquity, maybe the greatest dynasty ever, the 18th dynasty of Egypt. And again, these were princes or dynasts, local elites from the city of Waset, who, during the later stages of the second intermediary period, would rise up and unite Egypt under their control. He followed in a great tradition of kings such as Thutmose I, Thutmose III, the Queen Hatshepsut, the kings Kamose and Amos, and of course his own father Amenhotep III. Now, Amenhotep IV, or Akhenaten, was not destined to be king. He had an elder brother, Thutmose, who was the crown prince, if you want to view it at that. He was the acknowledged and open successor of their father, Amenhotep III. And both of those names, Amenhotep and Thutmose, they are dynastic names for this dynasty. A number of kings bear those names. And it sort of hints at where the dynasty sort of hints at the and the ambitions of the dynasty. By naming the boys the future kings Amenhotep, they're saying that the principal deity is pleased that this boy has been born to their family. Thoth, by naming their sons Thoth, is pleased. It's what will Thothmosis simply mean Thoth is born. But by naming that, it's wisdom, it's knowledge, it's writing. It's all born within these dynastic princes. But there's an abrupt change in Akhenaten. He appears to not have any sort of desire or willingness to support the older Egyptian pantheon. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of controversy surrounds exactly why he did it. There are a number of theories. One theory being that he suffered from some sort of physical disorder, and that his family sort of kept him hidden. Whenever there was a big public celebration or some great public appearance needed to be made, he was kept very much in the background, and it sort of hinted at him that these gods were not the gods for him. There's another reason, and that is that the powers of the priesthood of Amun had just grown too inflated, and that they were legitimately contending with the kings, with the kings of Dynasty 18 for premiership, to be the premier power in Egypt. And early members of his family had attempted to break break the power of the priesthoods. And he would take this to a whole new level. There had been earlier attempts to promote the cults and the temples and the shrines of other deities, and really to promote other solar deities that could challenge Amun. They all had modicums of success, but they did not come close to displacing the other gods or Amun. During the reign of Amenhotep IV, this policy would be taken to a whole new level, and his reign would introduce a radical new concept for the world. And again, there's some controversy over this, but his reign bore witness to the first time that monotheism, the belief in one God, was practiced anywhere. And there is some controversy. Some people believe that Akhenaten's religion was not a true monotheistic religion. Others believe that it had no bearing on later monotheistic faiths, which all trace their descent back to the Hebrew belief, the Hebrew practices of monotheism. But Akhenaten's reign, it does bear witness to a lot of striking developments that sort of lends credence to the fact that, or lead credence to the position that he is the first monotheist in the world, and that he was the one who taught the world monotheism, basically. And chief among these is the fact that he closed all the other temples in Egypt. And he took it a step further. He struck the word for gods from the Egyptian vocabulary. During his reign, he orders all the temples closed. He proclaims there to be one God, the Aten, a small solar disk, and he proclaims himself to be the priest of this God. Many people believe that Akhenaten didn't care about religion that deeply, and that this was simply a power play by the royal family, by Dynasty 18, to break the power of the priesthood. And you can certainly read into those to those arguments. Now, Akhenaten, Amenhotep changes his name to Akhenaten, and the name simply means it is beneficial to the Aten. And again, that's a play on the meaning, on the significance and meaning of names in Egyptian society and Egyptian philosophy and culture. The Aten was a minor solar disk, and he was popularized by preceding dynasts and preceding kings of Dynasty 18. There was even a funerary boat left in one of the tombs of an ancestor of Akhenaten, and the name of that boat was the Aten Gleams. So again, for a while, his family, it appears, had been supporting not just other cults, but promoting the Aten. Now, in the 6th year of his reign, is when Akhenaten declared that there was only one God, the Aten, and that he, Akhenaten, was the only priest of the Aten. Akhenaten goes on to close all the temples and cult sites throughout Egypt, and he embarks upon a 17-year personal reign that redefined the artistic traditions of Egypt. He redefined the religion of Egypt, and he redefined the literature and the focus of the Egyptian state. Akhenaten had inherited a vast imperial empire with provinces stretching up and down the Levantine, or the eastern shores, the shores of the eastern Mediterranean. Akhenaten doesn't care about that. Akhenaten's sole focus is religion. He wants to break the power of the priesthood. He wants to promote Atenism. He wants to cement Atenism, this monotheistic faith that he is so devoted to. He moves the capital of Egypt from Memphis. He does not build at Karnak. He does not build at Luxor. He does not reside in Waset. He moves to a virgin site in the desert where he orders a city built. And he built it there because he saw a sign from the Aten. So what he saw is a crook in the mountain and the sun rising through that crook. And that was his sign from the god to build his city. And he builds a city and he calls it Akhenaten. And he leads services personally at sunrise and sunset. And he pens epic verses in praises of his god, in praises to the Aten. Now, to Akhenaten, the Aten was the sole god. At least from his actions, from his writings, we get this image that he was thoroughly convinced that the Aten was the one God, that the Aten was the creator of all. And again, to highlight this, he removed the plural for gods in hieroglyph. It is clear that he was trying to break with the old cults also. He was trying to establish the kingship, and his family had the only links to God. Now, the only source of wealth, now the Egyptian kings were the premier source of wealth in the country. They were already viewed as divine. And he wanted to eliminate the threat from the priestly castes the way his earlier ancestors had eliminated their threat from nomad contenders. There were no rebellions, and this is a remarkable thing. There were no rebellions against him during this time. But the religion did put him at odds with the majority of the people, it seems. It certainly put him at odds with the religious elite and older people who would have devoted their entire lives to worshiping one particular god or all the gods. And a great way to think about this is, if you had lived your life under his father or his grandfather, if your life had begun under their reigns, then you would have known a number of gods, and you would have, through the course of your life, associated more closely with one god. Let's say that you associated very closely with the god Sobek, the crocodile-headed god. It would be very challenging, very tough for you to say, well, I just spent 55 years devoting myself to Sobek, and Sobek doesn't exist, and I don't know how much longer I have left, but I now would have to abandon Sobek and worship the Aten, and I can't make any personal pitches to Sobek. I cannot go to a site and offer up any goods to Sobek, make any sacrifices to Sobek, because there are no other religious sites. There's only where Akhenaten is, and only the literature that Akhenaten had put out. And by most accounts, you would have been illiterate. The priestly caste, the royal caste, were it appears to be the only people who were really literate in any of these societies. Learning wasn't something that the peasantry would have been in on. But there are no rebellions against Akhenaten during this period. Most of the people simply refused to follow him. The elites refused to follow him. They refused to abandon the gods. The only people who join in with Akhenaten's experiment in the desert are people with no real stakes in society, people looking to make their mark, and the artists. This is the most creative. This is really the only creative period in ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt was very conservative in their approach to artwork. Nearly all the statues look alike, and they all depict the pharaoh as strong. They depict the family as beautiful, and they present this very harmonious image. With Akhenaten's reign, we began to see imperfections. We began to see glimpses into their personal life. There was never a glimpse into the personal life of the pharaohs. From Akhenaten's work, from the work that he had commissioned, we can see images of Akhenaten eating with his family. We see images of children eating duck. And if you've ever eaten duck, you know that it is greasy, it is oily, it's sticky, it gets everywhere. We see the children greasy and with duck grease. We see images of Akhenaten, and he's not depicted in the strong mold of the pharaoh that in the artistic tradition that descends from Narmer's reign. He's depicted what looks like breast and hips. He's depicted with this very elongated face. And those depictions of Akhenaten, and he also has very cat-like, slit-like eyes. Those depictions sort of lend credence to this argument that there was some deformity with him, and that his father and his mother kept him hidden from society. And Akhenaten's depictions are not the depictions of everybody else. The beautiful Nefertiti, the beautiful queen, the woman who sort of symbolizes Egyptian beauty, was his wife. And she's not depicted to form in any sort of way. She is depicted as a classical Egyptian beauty. So again, it's this sort of weird, but very vibrant artistic tradition in Egypt being established during Akhenaten's experiment in the desert. And as always, hit like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know what you thought about this lecture. I am Ted, and I will see you guys next time. This isn't a lecture, this is a fast fact. But I'll see you guys next time for another fast fact.